morning. Welcome to AVNewsCast.com. How is everybody? I got everybody. There we are. Okay. Perfect.
I'm good.
Good.
We're missing Steve today, though.
We are.
That's a bummer.
It is. But we'll muddle through, I think.
Yes, we will.
Today's going to be an important show. It's going to be a little departure for us. But we're going to talk about a subject it's in the news right now, but it's a really serious issue that needs to be discussed because it's an issue that I think affects an awful lot of people, even if not directly through family members. And we just got it thrown in our faces in the media here with Robin Williams recently. So we have a couple of folks here that I think can shed some light for us on ways we can help with the situation.
Yeah, that's very true. Do you want to do the introduction?
Why don't you get Charmaine and I'll get Judy.
Is Charmaine in?
Yes, I'm here.
Oh, hi, Charmaine.
Hey, good morning.
Well, we have Charmaine Vega, and we all have had the pleasure of having her on the show a couple times. And she brings in the food element, and she brings in an element that's very interesting because she's directing us to the importance of what we put into our body and how that can actually shape our mental acuity and just our overall well-being and how important it is. To me, I thought that it was an interesting idea, but after trying just specifically doing the green shakes every day, I know firsthand that there's something about what you put in your body and how it can affect your well-being.
Right.
So I do have to say that there's absolutely a truth to that. So Charmaine, we're so happy that you're here with us and offering us more to what that is.
Well, thank you, Angie. I appreciate it.
Yeah, so a little closer to one of the mics.
One of them. Okay. How about if I pull this one?
Is
that better?
Yeah. Oh, no, now it's backwards.
Okay.
Okay. And while we're doing that, I also want to introduce Judy Cooperberg, who I find to be a genius on the psychological end, and I thought that maybe combining working with the mind through psychological techniques plus bringing diet into it, we would make a powerful combination.
Yeah. Judy, do you work a lot with manic depressive? What does your work specify in?
Okay. Well, I'm executive director for Mental Health America of Los Angeles here in the Antelope Valley. And we're not a counseling program or a clinical program. We're a rehab program for people with severe and persistent mental illnesses. So we do see a great number of our folks have schizophrenia, bipolar disorder, major depression, which are, the big three that really affect functioning for people. So
Judy, let me ask you, have you been able to see a difference or a correlation between what people eat on a regular basis? I'm definitely not trying to tell anybody to not take their medication. If you need lithium, take your lithium. But I'm just saying, have you been able to see people that eat a healthy diet along with the medication have a more successful life? Have you seen that correlation?
Well, it's not something that we focus on. What we focus on is the whole person. So we're looking at social supports, poverty, having a roof over their heads, employment, education. So we have to look at the whole person and what recovery means to that individual. And definitely good food habits contributes to everybody's well-being. We find that people with severe mental illnesses die 25 years earlier than those without mental illness, and they're usually dying from other physical health-related problems.
Yeah, I mean, you're absolutely right. My aunt had schizophrenia, and unfortunately she died almost 2 years ago. And with her, she died of other health-related issues brought on by the medication that she had to take to keep her mind set. So it's kind of it's kind of a catch-22 situation. It's, do you want to have, a semi-lucid, lifestyle? And if you do, then you have to take your medication. And the side effects caused her to have other medical issues that she died. I think she was, I want to say 55 years old. And she died alone somewhere. So it's just, the way we treat people with mental illnesses is just horrific. And I do think about poor Robin Williams, because you would think out of everybody, he would have the foundation, he'd have the greatest doctor, he'd have access to whatever medication, and he's got a loving family. Like, how could you not be able to handle that? And mental illness is just one of those things that there's so much, it seems like it's so much more to be learned from really the effects and really, whether or not the medication is helping you, and, are you willing to take the medication? Are you really taking the medication? There's so much more to it other than, if you break a leg, you can tell by the x-ray that you're healing and everything is going better. You know what I mean? It's just such a precarious, yeah.
Yeah, and the reports about how he passed made me really think about how much incredible pain this man was in. They said that he had superficial cuts, and
he went
I
multiple
really related
routes.
to that because I went through that. And to cut yourself because you have so much psychic pain that is indescribable and so overwhelming that you cut yourself to try to feel some physical pain.
And that's amazing that you would say that you went through that. I thought that was a new thing. My daughter was a cutter at 15, and I had never seen it before. I was like, "What the hell are you doing? Stop!" I just didn't have a space in my head for it.
All the girls I dated in high school were cutters. I didn't know there was anything different.
Yeah, that's been going on for quite a while, and I understand, even though I don't work with kids, I understand there is a surge in cutting behavior right now.
There is, but
where do they get it?
Angie, has anyone looked at maybe the chemicals that are in the food that's also contributing to this, because there's such a huge rise in it? Everyone is saying, that they see this, but very few people are looking at the chemicals that are actually in the food, the additives that are added, and many of them are neuron inhibitors, and that's what people don't realize. These neuron inhibitors actually prevent the brain from processing the way in which it should. One of the things that I point out would be something as simple as Doritos. Everybody eats Doritos, but if you read the ingredients and you look at the FDA website, you'll find that 47, they have approximately 47 ingredients in them, and they're all neuron inhibitors. So if you sit there and you're snacking on a bag of, Doritos, even potato chips, it depends on what they were fried in. That creates a hydrogenated oil. It creates all these other things, blockers. So you have all these things that are blockers when people think they're eating healthy or they're eating a better, healthier lifestyle, and they really aren't, because they're really eating nothing but chemicals. They're not nutrient dense. So the body...
You're taking junk food eating to another level.
That's exactly right. And so, rather than... and even some of the fruits, they still have the chemicals in them. This is where I push going organic. As you know, that's where we are tomorrow. But that's very important for people to say, oh, I'm eating healthier because I'm not eating as much. Well, the as much is a problem. They still have to cut out some of those things. I think on one of the other shows I pointed out something as simple as cilantro can pull out. It's like a magnet, and it pulls out those chemicals right out of your brain. People are not aware of that. So there are things that they can learn.
Wait, what was that vegetable that pulls it out? I can't. Can you pot it up a little bit, Jeff?
Let me go work the microphones here, just real quick.
All right. It's actually cilantro. I don't know if you can hear me or not, but it's actually...
Yeah, I can.
Okay, it's cilantro. And so cilantro is one of those things that people don't realize. You have it in a lot of the, Hispanic foods or Mediterranean foods, but you can just, and you can just sprinkle it on your food. You don't have to have it where you are doing it, over an overabundance. Something that I've recently started having people do.
Go
ahead.
Here's a question for you, Charmaine.
Uh-huh.
Is there 5, 10 different types of foods that we could put in our system just to eat on X amount of time to purify us, to clean us out, to see whether or not we can actually walk down the street and say, you know what, I feel the difference from that, 5-year Dorito binge that I was. Is it that simple of a thing that I could just change everything? I mean, I stopped eating Doritos when you said you could light them up when we were on the other show.
Right.
But I'm just wondering, is there 5, 10 different foods that if we just stopped today and just started eating, and again, I'm not contributing all mental illness to what you're eating. I'm just saying, we've got a lot of people in America that has depression just from dealing with the work. And so that bag of Doritos surely is not helping you deal with the realities of paying your bills and that horrific boss and blah, blah, blah. What I want to know is there 5, 10 foods that we can eat on a regular basis that will clear our head and just give us a mental detox?
I would say if you're talking, the main one would be, the cilantro, but then I would say your green vegetables, but you have to make sure that they are organic. You would need to ferret out what does that organic really mean, because all organic is not organic. Does it mean that the seeds are organic and it's not GMO, it's not the Monsanto, or does it mean that the soil is organic? Because just because you have an organic soil does not necessarily make the product that you have organic, because now you're using a seed, to make up something else that was not there. But my thing would be doing something more like what you're doing, and that would be having those green vegetables every day, because that helps to flush out your system, and then adding a little bit of cilantro to that. So if you're talking about what would be the best, and that's a taste thing, not everybody likes all the green vegetables. So whichever green vegetables you liked, adding a little bit of fiber, which could come from apples, which is going to give you the sweetness. And I don't mean the apple juice, I mean the full apple with the peeling, that's on it, and blending it. Not necessarily where you're using a juicer to extract the fiber out, but you can do it as simple as putting it in a regular blender so that you're getting all of that. You don't have to have it. And then if you need it, if it's too thick, add a little bit of ice just to dilute it, but make sure you're using a water that's been purified so that you don't have the chemicals in your water. So I'm a proponent of pushing the things where you're not having all of that, and I'm not going to say that there's a miracle 10. There are, there are certain ones that you can do that are better than the others. The other thing would be making sure if you're eating meats that they are grass-fed. The grass-fed is going to give you some of the other phytonutrients that you need, because the meat now has absorbed the nutrients from the grass, before, the animal was killed. Free-range, cage-free eggs also have omega-3s. So the things that are good for the brain would be foods that actually have your omega-3s in them. Knowing how to cook the foods, knowing that, if you're using an olive oil, that's more for salads and not necessarily for frying, because it becomes a hydrogenated oil. So there are a lot of tricks in there that they just don't tell you, that I would say tweaking it just a little bit can make a difference, and then over time. So, but I do think that you would feel a difference, as you have. You started doing the green drink, and then within a day or two, you were already feeling different. You have more energy.
I can't. I'm totally addicted to it. There's no way I'm going a day without. Let me tell you what I'm drinking. It's spinach, kale, lemon, cucumber, blueberries, and
the beady beads.
Oh, and I put a little cinnamon in it too.
And that's very good, because the cinnamon also, for a person who may have diabetes or something like that, or if they don't want their sugar to spike, the cinnamon will help regulate your sugar.
With losing weight, so.
Right, well, that too.
Before we get too much into talking on the treatments, Judy, what can you tell us What is the difference, so people know, between, being in like a normal funk from time to time versus clinical depression, a severe, long-term, and how can you spot that in yourself? How can you spot that in your family and friends? How can you tell the difference?
Well, you got to look at depression on a continuum, and we all respond to stressors, everyday stressors in our lives or traumatic experiences in our lives, and depression is actually a natural reaction. But when it lasts for 2 weeks or more, and some of the symptoms of major depression are feeling guilty, worthless, hopeless. People will have trouble concentrating, making decisions, changing their eating habits, either eating too little or too much, sleeping too little or too much. Where it really interferes with the quality and productivity of life.
So where you stop doing things you enjoy, you stop being around people, you isolate.
Yeah. Those normal activities that are things that you did before that you really enjoyed, the relationships, you pull away from people, a lot of social isolation with depression. And
that just compounds.
One of the things I learned in my recovery was when I would feel overwhelmed by the depression, I had to build up my support system. And, we talk about medications, which can help. Therapy certainly can help. But those social connections are very, very critical in continuing one's recovery. So I learned how to use my social connections, my support systems, in helping me through situations where typically I would withdraw and isolate and become dysfunctional.
How do you get somebody if they're in that mode to withdraw and isolate? How do you get them, or how do you get yourself snapped out of that and get back around people and get that social interaction?
It takes a lot of effort to do that, because the insidious thing about depression is that it tells you how worthless you are, and your energy level is so low that you don't want to get out of bed. I know people who have spent months in bed because of the depression. It's incredibly insidious.
Oh.
So you
hit it on the head. You hit it on the head, because it's like, it's a double negative, because you're in your own head, and you might have a little lucid moment, oh my God, I'm depressed, I need to do something. But the depression is so heavy. I think you really hit it when you said your support system. They need to know what's going on with you. We have to stop being so ashamed of the possibility of you being depressed.
Yeah, you got to shake that stigma.
A lot of people take depression lightly, like, oh, you're depressed, get over it.
Suck it up. By your bootstraps.
Yeah.
People don't take it seriously, and the world that we're living in right now, it's not throwing daisies every day at us.
Well, I used to say that. Think about the most horrible thing that ever happened to you in your life. A loved one passed away, a pet passed away, you lost your job, you went bankrupt. And magnify that 100 times and carry that around with you 24/7 for months at a time. That's what depression is.
That's horrible.
It is.
The other thing is,
you lack those endorphins where you're feeling any kind of pleasure. So one of the things that we also encourage people to do, in addition to socializing with others, is also do some physical activity, because that stimulates the endorphins in your brain.
Bungee jump, that'll do it.
Will help you.
Do some bungee jumping.
That's a shock to the system. That would be a good shock to the system. Now, I know, Jeannie, that we have NAMI in the Antelope Valley that its whole purpose is to help families to support loved ones that are going through depression and things of that nature. Now, within the entity that you work, do you have do you have support groups that you might want to mention for our listeners to possibly volunteer, or maybe they need to reach out to?
Well, all of our volunteers at this point are master's students, doing internships. So we don't have a volunteer program, but we do have one of our Palmdale, the Discovery Resource Center. They have a number of groups, and anyone can go to that. They don't have to be enrolled in one of our programs. NAMI is absolutely wonderful. Not only do they do support for the family members, but they do a lot of education. And just like MHA, they're also an advocacy organization. So we work very closely with NAMI, and I do a lot of referrals to them, and they do a fabulous job.
You're speaking with 3 board members right now.
That's right. We're all on
I didn't know that.
Yeah, we're all on the board. The thing is,
we host one of their, actually a couple of their training classes at MHA.
Oh, nice.
One of the things that people don't look at also is, that you did bring up, Judy, is the endorphins, the exercise, even something as simple as just getting out and walking. Because we're here in the Antelope Valley, you can just walk around and just see things. I mean, even if it's trash in the street, it's like, just go and just get out into the sunshine. The sunshine is going to give you your vitamin D. Because there's also a chemical imbalance. When you mention the endorphins and all these other things and being depressed, the chemical makeup in the body changes. They've done that through blood tests and all kinds of things to show. So if they're taking medication, and just like you said, if they need the medication, they need to take it. But that's where also the food comes in, because the food is going to give you some of those nutrients that you need to change those chemicals that are in your body. And that's what people don't.
That's a great point, because thinking about it, it's like I've been on antidepressant medication before, but I don't recall the doctor saying, "Here, go get your lab work done, so I could see what you're lacking that might be contributing to whatever it is that you're feeling right now." Shouldn't that be item 1 on the agenda?
It should be.
Yeah, I've had to figure mine out on my own. I have a very anemic pineal gland, apparently, and I had to figure it out by I've gone through depressions. It's been horrible, and I've noticed that when I was a kid, if I wore sunglasses, that I would go into a depression almost immediately. And
really?
Because I do not produce serotonin at a sufficient level.
For your brain.
We have a higher rate of people reporting depression during the winter months. It's called seasonal affective disorder.
That's it.
And it's that lack of sunshine. So there's actually some special lights that people will buy, and it helps with those symptoms.
Right. And that's why I'm agreeing with Jeff and Angie that that's something that should be number 1 on the list, is to get a blood test, because that blood test is going to tell you where the imbalance is in the chemicals. And now you can look at, either what medication in combination with what foods. And if you looked at the foods and you looked at the chemical makeup of the foods themselves, then maybe some of the medications that they're taking wouldn't have to be started out as such a high dosage, because that's really what the medication is doing. It's really trying to balance the chemicals in the body without them saying that that's what it's doing. And they're assuming that I'm going to give you this medication because I believe that this is the chemical imbalance you have. And then what happens is you become a guinea pig in an experiment, because you'll go back and you'll say, well, that medication didn't work.
Yeah, they go through 15 trying to figure out
Exactly. As opposed to if they had something that was more absolute, and you can say, oh, you need more of this or more of that. And there are the brain foods, which we've talked about on a previous show as well, that helps, and that would be the omega-3s, your avocados, your salmon. There's all of those kind of things that you can have that you can incorporate into the food, into your system, that's not as expensive as people might think. And that's one of the things the 3 of us point out on Thursdays when we're over on the boulevard, is that you can get all this organic food and it's not nearly as expensive as you might think. And it does change your outlook. Well, it does.
You look at how many people are on Prozac and Celexa and all these different things. They're all serotonin reuptake inhibitors.
Right.
They keep the serotonin that does get produced floating around in your brain. What can you do diet-wise then that might keep that going to replicate that without
without the Prozac?
Yeah.
Without the Prozac.
Wait, isn't there something over the counter? There's something over the counter.
Well, they sell melatonin. I've had no trouble with that.
Well,
that's basically how it breaks down for the listeners. When sunlight enters your eyes, it triggers your pineal gland to start producing serotonin, which regulates mood and wakefulness, and it basically elevates mood. And then as the sun goes down and less light enters your eye, then your pineal gland turns around and starts making melatonin, which makes you sleepy, and it's when you start getting cranky and grumpy and need to go to bed, that's what happens. So if you don't get enough of the serotonin, then you're at that cranky, grumpy, go to bed state all the time.
Which is an interesting thing that you just pointed out. Some people think that when a person is depressed, that they just, have, the sleepiness or I want to sleep, but they don't realize that it could be one of the things that you just said, Jeff, and that would be the crankiness as well. But to answer your question about serotonin, some of the ladies out there would probably like to know that that's dark chocolate.
No, not just for ladies.
So something,
Stick a strawberry in that, I'm all set.
To be honest,
Well, it's also magnesium.
And magnesium.
Oh, okay.
But Angie, I did not say a Snicker bar. And I didn't say Almond Joy, so you're not going to tell me that has dark chocolate, and it has coconut, and it has the almonds in it, and all of those are brain foods.
And all that wonderful high fructose corn syrup.
Exactly, and that's what that's the bad part. All the other 3 ingredients I named are all very good for the brain, but not the other things that they have. But you can also make your own. That's the other thing. You can make your own with the dark chocolate, shredded coconut, a little bit of coconut milk, some almonds in there, so you can actually make your own. And instead of using some of the other things, how about throwing some brown rice in there as opposed to maybe some of the other things that they might put in there. Experiment with it and see how you can make that.
I'm sorry, I thought we were trying to have something that tastes good.
Angie, here you go again. We go through that every week with you.
Judy, you should watch these shows that these two do. It's unbelievable.
But
I'm just...
Yeah.
But Angie, it's so funny to watch her out there on Thursday night. She's like a little kid,
She's worse than a little kid. I can get the kids to eat the stuff, trying to get her.
I'm with you with the organic, and that's it. I get my fruit and vegetables on Lancaster Boulevard every Thursday. That's where I shop for produce. I have not shopped in a grocery store for produce since I started the farmers market. And I know that most of those vendors, although they might not all have the legal certification of organic, they are operating as such. And so I know that it makes me feel better that I'm having it. I'm trying great new things, especially from there's an Asian spot that literally I come home and my daughter's like, you're going to do what with that tree that you brought home? Because it looks like I brought home a tree. And I'm like, no, this is great. This is like supposed to be 10 apples and 4 carrots, all in one with one leaf. And I'm completely sold, and I'm eating it, and I feel 120% better. And I just wish that someone would grab a piece of a tree that would just drop the weight. I don't understand why that's so hard. Like, just, eat a leaf, drop the weight, and then I'll be set.
Well, that's a brain issue too, Angie.
I think Monsanto found that tree and they've patented it and tucked it away for later years until they can synthesize it.
That's exactly what has happened, and that's why we need to have more people.
Well, you know what you need, Angie, if you want to do that, go down to Bolivia. Like I've always said, go down to Bolivia, get some seeds for some coca plants. You could plant those things as shrubs in your yard, nobody would know what the heck it looks like, and just go out and chew on a coca leaf.
That's true.
There you go. That'll suppress the appetite. That's an appetite suppressant and stimulant. That's where cocaine comes from.
Oh, it is?
It nobody knows what they look like, so you can plant that out in your front yard. It's not like growing marijuana out there. Nobody has any clue what that looks like.
Right.
Jeez. I'm going to ask the Asian group. They might have
They probably have something over there that's very close to that. We can always try that tomorrow, because we will be there tomorrow.
I think you're a bad influence, Jeff.
Absolutely.
Just saying.
Absolutely.
Just saying. No,
So, Jeannie, how long has it been since you battled your stint with depression, I'm assuming?
Judy.
Judy, I'm sorry.
That's okay. Well, I suffered from depression since I was very, very young. My first suicide attempt was when I was 10 and a half months old.
Is there a genetic component in that?
No, it was environmental for me. And I grew up in a household that was intolerant of expressing feelings, and we would get punished for crying or getting angry or, having any kind of a normal kid outburst of frustration. And so I learned how to stuff it down, literally, with food eventually. And when you suppress anger, at some point it's going to come out, either as an explosion or an implosion. And depression is an implosion of anger. And so I grew up a very depressed kid my entire life, and a fat kid, which was symptomatic of my depression. And it peaked when I graduated from college, and my father passed away. And I spent 3 years going in and out of mental hospitals, attempting suicide several times, abusing alcohol and drugs, and it was pretty horrible.
Yeah.
So my recovery was the end of 1981, so now I'm aging myself. I was 9 years old now.
There you go. Same here.
But my recovery had a lot to do with changing very consciously a number of my behaviors, and also paying attention to a lot of the lessons I learned in many years of therapy, and finding a purpose to my life. And my purpose was to work in mental health, to do community development, developing programs for Mental Health America, and that's what I've been doing for the last 33 years.
Wow.
Right.
Congratulations on that.
Absolutely. That's a lot to deal with.
Yeah, and if you ever read any of Viktor Frankl, Dr. Frankl wrote about the meaning and purpose of suffering, and when you find a meaning and purpose, there's no despair. And he was a very famous Viennese psychiatrist who taught for Freud. And we were pen pals a long time ago.
Wow.
Yeah, and he taught me a lot about purpose and meaning, and
Wow.
that's how I live my life now.
And I think what to add to that would be not having the shame that's attached to it, the stigma that's out there. And the reason I bring that up is because that's a part of the depression. You also have that in women who've been abused, not just physically, but the emotionally, the psychological, the financial, all of that. And the shame that comes with that sends them into a spiral of depression, but it's hidden, where people don't know that's what it is because of the shame. And many of them are businesswomen, doctors, lawyers, where their spouses have done these type of things, but they don't let it out. And they go through that depressed state, but nobody knows that that's what they're dealing with until they go ballistic.
Well, professionals are going through it as well.
Yes.
And you're absolutely right. There's a lot of shame and guilt over having whatever mental health issues someone has. And that's why, 33 years ago when I decided that, this is what I was going to do, I became very vocal about it and open and honest about my illness. And I have no shame or guilt over what I went through. It was not my choice.
Correct.
I did not ask for this to happen to me.
Where and why did that start?
I feel like part of that purpose of what I experienced was I can talk about it. And I can tell people there's no shame to getting treatment to saying that you've experienced it. It's actually a strength to do that.
Yeah.
And it's a strength to ask for help.
Where and why did that start? Because you can break an arm, and there's no shame in going in there and getting a cast on it. Why is it?
There's always been stigma to mental illness.
Mm-hmm.
You know, we lock people away. We use shackles and chains in state mental hospitals.
Mm-hmm.
We tortured people because they had mental illness, and this goes way back.
I watched a documentary. What was that place on Long Island, Angie? You guys are New Yorkers. That hospital that
Bellevue?
No, it was on Long Island. It's abandoned now.
Yeah, it is, and I can't remember it.
Yeah, Geraldo did he slipped into there. It was horrible. People just rolling around on the floors. They just tucked them in there, out of sight. And
what do you mean? That's not Bellevue?
No, Bellevue is in the city. I can't remember the name of it right now.
I'll look it up.
But there are several state hospitals. Conditions were like that.
Yes.
I was in Camarillo State Hospital at one point, involuntarily committed because I was suicidal. And it was a horrible experience. You know, the staff were very abusive. And it was, you know, I saw firsthand what was, you know, how people were being treated. And when I go around and I do presentations with professional staffs at hospitals and mental health facilities, I talk about the difference in treatment. Invariably someone asks, what made the difference in the treatments that you received? And it always comes back to the people. And I try to teach my staff this, is that when somebody is at their lowest point, the way you treat them is how they're going to view life. Mm-hmm. And they're going to remember how you treated them. Mm-hmm. And when I was at County USC, the best thing that happened, even though I thought it was a horrible unit I was on, and there was some abusive staff, when the psychiatrist took me out to walk on the grounds of this beautiful campus, and I said, what makes you think I'm not going to run away? She said, I'm treating you like a human being. I expect you to act like one. And I said, okay, just asking. You know, but then I remembered that 30 years later.
It was Willowbrook.
Willowbrook, right.
Uh-huh. Horrible. If you look, take a look at that on YouTube, the conditions that were in there. It was just horrendous.
Okay, I will. You know, the other side of all of this is, yes, we have road to go to get people to be able to accept mental health issues as not the plague and not to, you know, chalk them up as a loon and not to deal with them. But then you think of our justice system and how many people that are being locked up assumed just to be evil by nature. But a lot of these people really are having psychological breaks. Like for me, and this is just a personal observation, but when you go and you drown all three of your children, the first thing for my mind is not to give you the electric chair, because I think you're broken, because that's just not a normal thing. Something is wrong with you. Right. And it doesn't mean that to help the situation is to put you in prison with a whole lot of other people that are making conscious choices for what they've done.
Yeah, those folks are psychotic. They don't know what they're doing. And the saddest part is when they come out of that psychosis and they're told what happened.
Right.
The devastation.
Right.
You know,
and then they're in
don't know.
Yeah.
And
look at how we treat them. I mean, it's just terrible.
Yeah.
Because
I did some pretty bizarre things when I was ill. I had no idea what I was doing and the consequences of what I was doing. I never hurt anybody, but I did some pretty strange things, you know, by all accounts. So, and the other thing, part of the stigma of mental illness is that people are lazy, people are stupid, unintelligent, and it's a character flaw. It's none of those things. Mm-hmm. Actually, the majority of people with mental illness have very high IQ.
That's exactly right.
Oh yeah, when I was in the Navy, I was in naval intelligence, and I worked with a lot of the crypto people. Most brilliant people I've ever met in my life, the code breakers.
Right.
Brilliant. Not a one of them right. Not one of them.
Jeff, were you a code breaker?
It's true. I mean, there was just something off. I've always I've had this theory that the mind is like one of those metal sheds you get from Sears to put your lawnmower and rakes in, and intelligence is like snow. And you can only pack so much snow on top of one of those sheds before it collapses in on itself. So,
right.
Calling people, stupid that are crazy, that's very wrong.
I do want to point out something.
And that's why we have to be mindful about our language, because it trivializes and it invalidates what people's experience is.
Right.
You don't trivialize someone who has cancer. Why would you trivialize and ridicule someone who has an illness they didn't ask for?
Well, that also comes under the abuse category as well. That's what they, consider the coercive abuse, is the language component of that. That's one of the things. But Judy, you also pointed out something very interesting when you said that the psychiatrist took you out on the grounds for a walk and said they treated you like a human being. I know back in around World War I or II, I don't remember which one it was, that was something that the hospitals did, is they started putting in gardens and that type of thing in the hospitals to treat the patients, because they found that when they were gardening or doing some of those things, that a lot of the symptoms would subside. So that's another component that I always suggest to people, is that they do some type of gardening, because going back to the Indian tradition, that's becoming one with the earth, and that helps to balance you as well.
It also builds community.
Exactly. That's exactly right. So I think that's something that we need to have more of, is having, people participating in community gardens, or even if you have your own garden, ask some of the neighbors to join in if they don't have one. Just doing something like that and saying, hey, can you come help me with my garden? And, if people joined in and did that, then what would happen is, and just pitch in for the water.
Yeah.
Help them make the garden, help do the water, and now everybody receives the fruits of the labor, so to speak.
And that also contributes to that, those portions of recovery, of empowerment, and purpose.
That's exactly right, and it fits all of those categories. And I think something like a garden, look at what you just said, the community, fulfillment of purpose. Now I can, bring in the nutritional component and what it does. So that would help treat the whole person. Just something as simple as a garden. It's that simple.
Now I have to invite the neighbors over, because I do that with the kids, and I love it. It's it's where I can totally get rid of my stress. It's wonderful out there. And then I get even my devious side, when I find a big fat tomato worm out there. The kids and we can yank it off there, and we run into the tarantula. So we have a pet tarantula, and then so this thing comes and tries to destroy our garden, and we can get in there and feed our other pet.
Right, and that's that.
And get the vindictive stuff out of the way too.
Right. But I also think that goes back to the way communities used to be, with people, helping, the way it used to be in the pioneer days, when, if a person's house burned down, everybody would come and help to build it up. So why wouldn't we do that, where people have their own family garden, and that some of the other neighbors don't have one, bringing other people in the community saying, hey, would you like to help? Would you like to help? And then everybody pitches in for the water, and then everybody benefits all over the place.
It's a brilliant idea.
I would suggest that.
I'm doing that.
That's a good one. That is a good one. Hopefully your neighbors don't know you very well.
I've got strange signs and stuff up around the house all the time. Anyway, but there's such a they move in and out of there so fast. My mask of normalcy is pretty good.
But see, you can have an impact on more people by doing that, since they move in and out so fast. You'll have a greater impact than the rest of us, where our neighbors are there for 30 and 40 years.
And they won't have time to get spooked. Okay.
True.
But that's what that's what Judy said is what sparked that, and that my brain to recall that little component that I think would be beneficial. For everyone to do something like that. Don't wait but just do it, and that way neighbors get to know each other. I mean, if we had an earthquake or something, how many people really know who their neighbors are around them? You may see them, but do you know who they are?
Yeah, I know the people immediately on either side of me, and that's it.
Right.
I've been there since 2000.
Yeah, but it's like, just go and say, hey, hello, or put up a sign and say, hey, let's have a barbecue. Everybody come over to my house and bring a dish. Do a neighborhood potluck. I know, Angie, you probably may remember this, in living in New York, we would have block parties. You'd block off the street.
Absolutely.
You'd block off one end of the street, block off the other end of the street, and everybody all in the apartment buildings, they come out and you have a block party for days.
Yeah, absolutely.
I don't see that going on here in the West Coast. And we have streets.
We're not used to it. We're all bedroom communities. We all just we go there to sleep and shower.
Yeah, but yet people will
drive.
People will talk about how New Yorkers are so cold. I don't think Angie is, and I don't think I am.
I don't think we're cold. We're just you've got the 2-hour commute each way, and you get home, all you can do is collapse. And
yeah, but New York is the same way. You've got the 2-hour commute on the train.
That's exactly right. Exactly.
But the thing is that New Yorkers tend to be nosy.
Yep. All right, Angie, don't give up our secret. Don't give out our secret that when we try to ask those questions.
Yeah. You think we're friendly, but we're really nosy. We want to know what you got in the house so we can go shopping. And yeah, that's what it is.
That's true. It's not nosy, Angie. It's curiosity. It's what makes our brain tick.
Okay.
It's our intelligence. Okay. We're trying to spark the intelligence in our creative side to see. That's not what it is.
No, but you do make a good point, because if we embrace our neighbors, and I get it. Sometimes you don't want to do that because you never know who's next door, and sometimes when I go outside and I'm letting the kids ride their bike, there's this one neighbor that it's almost like she's waiting at the window to see when I come outside so she could come outside. And it's like, sometimes I want to talk to you, but not every day, But it's probably lonely.
Yeah.
Yeah, she probably is. And of course I embrace her, and of course I end up spending 2 hours longer than I was going to with the kids outside. So I do that. And you're right. She probably is very lonely.
Invite her in and have a Mama Vega lemon drop with her.
That would work.
Yeah.
That would put everybody in a good mood. That would put everybody in a good mood. Along those lines, Angie, that's true, because I have a neighbor. She's been my neighbor for like over 15, 18 years. She looks like she's a hoarder, from what you can see, would never speak to anybody. Last year, a tree fell in her front yard. And I told one of my other neighbors, I said, why don't you go ask her? You have a stove. Well, go ask her if you can, have that, clean it out of her yard. And then she didn't answer her door. She wouldn't do anything. And then finally I saw her one day outside, and I stopped her. And I said, hey, my neighbor down the street would like to know if she can move this tree out of your yard so that it's not sitting in your yard. And she said, oh, yes, she can do that. She had not spoken to me or even waved in her car in over 18 years, and now she does it, just because I made that effort to forcefully force myself on her. And, because I could see that she's, you can tell, from the street, you can look at her house and see that you wouldn't be able to get in there at all. But yet, I have to make that step little by little by little and see if I can't find out what's going on. I believe she's a widower, but it's like she doesn't talk to anybody, no one, she's, but when you see it, so it's that type of thing, and I believe she's lonely, but how do you break that? I don't know. I've just tried this little, and I know that we've made that headway. That little bit where she'll wave now, but she speaks to no one.
Yeah.
So.
It's a scary thing to be older in today's society, because you just have a mark on your forehead, because there's so many people that will take advantage of you, and I totally get that. I mean, it's a crying shame.
It is. It really is. And sometimes people will assume that because you're being nice, that you're naive, and they try to take that advantage of you just because of kindness. Because people are not used to that the way it used to be. Just somebody saying hi. I think about how many times I see somebody who's walking down the street who needs a ride, and it's like, I can't do that because you just don't know. Whereas years ago, you wouldn't think anything of it. You see a person walking down the street or whatever, and you would go, hey, you need a ride? Give them a ride and drop them off wherever they need it, to go. These days, you wouldn't necessarily do that.
I watched Toby Hooper fix that. I watched Texas Chainsaw Massacre.
Yes.
Yeah, I'm done.
So it's that kind of thing. But if people got to know who their neighbors really are, just from a social aspect, you don't have to be in their face every day. But, in the summertime, once a month, have, some type of get-together or do some type of rotation from homes. One day it's at this person's home, and then the next month it's at another person's home, and the next month it's at another person's home, and everybody brings something as a potluck. I think that would help, because we have to face it that at some point in time we are going to have an earthquake, and you may wish that you knew who your neighbors were, or that your neighbors would come and look to see where you were.
Right.
And they would know that, hey, we've got somebody in the neighborhood missing. But if you don't make that connection with your neighbors and that community around you, people don't even know you exist, so they're not going to come looking for you.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. That's the truth.
I imagine I'm going to be the guy they find, days after the cat's in there, and
we'll come looking for you, Jeff. Angie and I'll come looking for you.
Yay!
Too funny. So, what do you suggest, ladies? What can we do in our community to make it easier for people? How can we make an impact? What can we do to make a difference?
Talk to them. Just go talk to your neighbors. Say, hey, how are you doing? And sometimes it's a matter of saying how you feel that day to get them to say how they feel that day. Because sometimes that's it. Or, just go walk through the neighborhood. Say, hey, I'd like to go for a walk. Would you like to go with me? Something like that. We talked about exercise and the endorphins, but going walking can help too. People walk off weight. You don't necessarily have to go pounding the pavement, but you can just go walking, because just doing that and talking to somebody, encouraging people even to use the opposite side of their brain. If you're right-handed and you normally write with your right hand, switch and try to do it with your left. Force your brain to work the other side.
Mm-hmm.
I would say be accepting. Whether it's a coworker who tends to be reclusive, who's shy, whether it's someone in church who you see that isn't with a group of people, is to embrace them. To me, that's what religion is supposed to be about, is taking care of one another.
Right.
And not ridiculing people, being non-judgmental. And, kindness goes a long way.
They're just taking an interest in somebody. That's the most addictive drug there is. Somebody actually stopping and wanting to know what's going on in your head, what you're like. Somebody actually stopping and taking the time to want to know what's happening with you. That's incredible for people. You need that. You need to feel like you have some sort of significance in the world. And as people just pass you by and you get more and more isolated, that takes its toll.
And you're right. I saw a lady in the store the other day. She had all these, they looked like almost like boils all over her face, all over her arms, just everywhere you could tell. And I stopped her and I said, can I ask you a question? And I hope you don't find me to be offensive. But I would like to I said, I've never seen that. Could you, explain to me what it is? And she did. I wrote down the information of what she was giving me. I don't recall it right now. But she was telling me the disease that she had and what it was. And I thanked her. And she was very grateful that I did it, because you could see everybody else in the store, they were kind of looking at her like she was a leper.
Yeah. Right. Good thing she didn't run into a Sheldon. On our coat of arms, it says Lance and Drain. We have too much fascination with that kind of thing. So.
Yeah, but she was appreciative that I stopped her and asked. you know, and rather than just staring and looking as though, oh, she's odd. And I think most people would like that, who have a difference about them of what we consider to be normal. If we just stopped and said, you know, just what I did, excuse me, I don't mean to be offensive, but I've never seen that. Would you mind sharing with me what it is? And don't be upset if they tell you no. You know, because I was really curious, because I didn't know what it was, and you know, and I raise my grandchildren the same way. If you see something and you want to know, don't be afraid to ask. Don't just stare, you know, but ask. If you see someone in a wheelchair or something and they're very much overweight, when I did the cafeteria in the hospital, I had a woman that way, and I told her, you know, you have a very beautiful face and you're wearing this muumuu. Do you think that we can't see that you're overweight? We can. And because I stopped and talked to her, she actually ended up started to lose the weight and then came back in months later and told me that was so encouraging to her. Because no one would talk to her because she was grossly obese, is what it was. But everybody was looking at her as though, oh my God, you should do something about that. But no one walked over to her and told her, you should do something about that. And you're very beautiful. You know, you're not hiding by putting on a bigger dress. You know, that's not hiding anything. And I mean, I spent some time with her. I didn't, you know, just go into it that way. But in the conversation, that's what I said. But I stopped and had that conversation with her. If we did something like that, you don't know the positive impact that can have, because oftentimes people are lonely. Just like Judy said, they're lonely, they're depressed. Which may be why they're that way, and therefore they're not going to be socializing with people. The only reason she was there because she had to go to the hospital, you know, for whatever treatment. But even the clinicians there, do they really stop to talk to them to find out who they are, or do they move on to the next patient?
No, you got to run them through.
Exactly. So I think if we became more aware of who other people are, be they our neighbors, be it just somebody we run into, even in the grocery store. If you see somebody and they have on a pretty dress, tell them. Or if you see, you know, somebody, oh, your child is you know, really nice or cute, or what, just tell them. Just saying something to somebody that's going through your head, so long as it's positive, because Jeff, we know what might go through your head.
Hey now. What are you saying?
That's a great point, though. I mean, that's the bottom line. And on that note, I guess we should say goodbye because we're out of time.
I think we are out of time.
Yep, we are.
Well, thank you so much, Charmaine. Thank you so much, Judy.
Thank you. You're welcome, and thank you.
Wonderful having you guys on.
Thank you.
Absolutely. Thank you.
You're welcome.
And we'll see you guys tomorrow.
Okay. Bye-bye.
Okay, bye.
Okay.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye. Thanks.